Well, Ohio State might have hit a new low yesterday. A 14-3 loss to Missouri, 3 total points on offense. The first time the Buckeyes were held without a touchdown in over 80 games. What is wrong with this Ohio State program after the 3 straight losses to Michigan? Ryan Day possibly on the hot seat. I'm going to go through all of it, my speculation going into the offseason, beginning with Ryan Day. And it's funny because we're expanding from the 4-team playoff to the 12-team playoff, and that might be what saves Ryan Day, the fact that college football is implementing a 12-team playoff, because Ryan Day can now lose to Michigan, he could lose to Oregon, and still very easily make the playoff. If you take a look at Ohio State's schedule next year, it is very easy, especially early in the season. It'll be very interesting, though, to see what the Buckeyes do when it comes to the quarterback position, considering Kyle McCord transfers. I think that's a win-win, especially a win for Ohio State, considering Kyle McCord entered his name into the portal, and the only team that would guarantee him a starting spot was a team like Syracuse. So Kyle McCord, clearly not a great talent. It's not like Ohio State is losing a ton with him leaving. The question became, would it be Devin Brown? Would it be Lincoln Kienholz? Neither of those two looks good in the Cotton Bowl. Devin Brown got injured again. I believe that's his 3rd injury now in the past year. So you have to start wondering, is Devin Brown injury prone? And if you're Ryan Day, what do you do when it comes to the quarterback position? Because there were rumors, maybe Cam Ward, maybe he's an option, although it looks like possibly he's going to FSU or Miami, getting a big NIL payday. Could Will Howard be an option? I'll be honest, if Ohio State does go out and get Will Howard over USC, which it looks like it could be trending in that direction considering how Miller Moss looked for USC in his bowl game, this is very underwhelming for the Buckeyes in my opinion. Will Howard from Kansas State is a decent quarterback, but is he really enough for the Buckeyes to lead them to a national championship? I have serious doubts on that. And then if you are Ryan Day, and we all know Ryan Day, he's not getting fired. I understand fans, they're super upset right now, but Ryan Day will at least be given another year. He's got a home game with Michigan next year. We don't know how that program is going to be, considering they could be facing sanctions. But the Missouri loss, it's just embarrassing. And I think the worst part of the Missouri loss was Ohio State's offensive line performance. Justin Fry, another Ryan Day hire, he needs to be fired immediately. I really don't think people, just an average college football fan, understands how important offensive line play, and whether it's Devin Brown, especially Lincoln Kienholz late in that game, the kid had no chance. Ohio State's offensive line was getting destroyed. Yes, they were without Marvin Harrison Jr., but you would think facing a Missouri team, you still have more talent than this team. There is no reason the offensive line should be getting humiliated like that with a month to prepare. So I think that's one of the big changes Ryan Day needs to make. Justin Fry, he's been here multiple years. The offensive line has gotten worse under him. It's time to go. He's not a great recruiter. It is what it is. Obviously, Ohio State needs to fire Parker Fleming, their special teams coach. Very few college programs even have dedicated special teams coaches, and Ohio State is terrible at special teams. So that's another one. And also, I think it would be time for Larry Johnson to go, the legendary defensive line coach. Teams are negatively recruiting against Ohio State, using the fact that Larry Johnson is very old to, he's going to retire, you're going to end up getting a new defensive line coach. I do think it's time. And also, how about Ohio State's defensive line, the significant lack of production from the pass rushers? I mean, Jack Sawyer did have 3 sacks that tied his overall season total last night. But yeah, Jack Sawyer and JTT, very disappointing. So Ohio State, there are a boatload of questions going into this offseason, and I think the biggest one has to center around the quarterback situation. Are you going to try and roll with Devin Brown and Kienholz, or do you bring in a Will Howard? Do you try and get desperate possibly to bring in a Cam Ward? It'll be very interesting to see what they do. You also do have Air Nolan. I really dislike when people say, just start Air Nolan, the true freshman. It's so hard for true freshmen to succeed at the college level, especially right out of the gate. I mean, I guess you could, but Air Nolan is a recruit who kind of had a little bit of an underwhelming senior season anyways, so I don't think Aaron Nolan is going to come in and start right away for Ohio State, but we will see. Either way, I don't think anyone thought it was going to be this bad for Ohio State under Ryan Day, to where He did get the unfortunate break of Michigan not playing in 2020, but technically his record against Michigan is 1-3. And we'll see if any of that gets vacated. I don't know, man. A lot of those excuses went out the window when, they suspended Jim Harbaugh and Michigan still beat Ohio State anyways. But either way, when it comes to this current Ohio State situation, what's going to save Ryan Day is the expanded playoff, because even if they lose to both Michigan and Oregon next year, their two toughest opponents by far, that's a two-loss Big Ten team very, very likely to make the playoff no matter what and be given a chance. And I thought I would mention another thing. This is something that I realized last night. We're really never going to be in a situation like this in college football again. And what I mean by that is there's a New Year's Six game with Ohio State's best player opting out, with Ohio State's starting quarterback already on another team. This is never going to happen again, because if this was next year, there's a one-loss Ohio State team. Their only loss came to the number 1 team in the country. They would be in the playoff as a potential number 5 or number 6 seed. And we wouldn't deal with any of these opt-outs. So this is not going to happen again when it comes to these weird, Ohio State-Missouri games where Ohio State is missing all these players. It's just not going to happen. So that's the good thing when it comes to college football. And it's like, how much do you put into a game like this, Ohio State without their best player? It's always very hard, but it still is an embarrassing performance from Ohio State, considering they had a month to prepare, considering how bad the offensive line was, just getting beat like a drum. And another issue for Ohio State has been the new world of NIL, believe it or not, losing out on several 5-star players to schools like Miami. They recently had a big 5-star defensive tackle who they had given a decent NIL package. They got him to commit in the summer, Justin Scott, only to lose him right before the early signing day. So that's another thing Ohio State's dealing with. Also, it does seem like Ohio State's recruiting classes aren't necessarily fully reflective of what's actually going on, because it seems like they always land 2 5-star receivers, which is great. I mean, you always want 5-star receivers. It's not like you're not going to take them. Brian Hartline is an amazing recruiter, but your roster is kind of lopsided. You don't have these superstars in the trenches. Now, they were able to hang on to a 5-star pass rusher from Georgia, but it does always seem like Ohio State's recruiting classes seem to be lopsided on the offensive side of the ball. The defense for Ohio State this year was very good. The only issue, I would say, it's the fourth quarters. I mean, against Michigan and against Missouri, they couldn't buy a stop against either of those teams, but at some point, you're going to have to score on offense. You score 3 points, that's going to be the big issue. And going into next year, Ohio State, the major question marks surround the quarterback, also the offensive line, but in general, Ryan Day, the question becomes, if he actually loses to Michigan again next year, is he fired? I mean, is that it? It's kind of weird because he could lose to Michigan. They could still make the playoff. They could win a national title. That's just the world of college football we're entering. And we were almost there last year with Ohio State getting blown out by Michigan. If they would have beaten Georgia, they possibly could have won a national title beating TCU, but either way, there are a lot of questions when it comes to Ohio State. It's hard to really gauge this game. If Ohio State would have beaten Missouri, would everyone be happy? It's just kind of a weird game where technically it's a big game. It's a New Year's Six game, but Ohio State, third-string quarterback, their best player sits out. I will say when it comes to Lincoln Kienholz, I don't know if it's a byproduct of him being a true freshman or the fact that the offensive line was just so bad, but he looked very unprepared. And people might say, well, yeah, he's a backup true freshman, but he had the entire bowl season. Everyone knew McCord was transferring. He was the backup quarterback to Devin Brown, so you would think if he was thrust in, he would be able to make some plays, and it seemed like, the first series they had Kienholz in, they ran 3 straight times. They even ran on like a 3rd and 8. It's just, the team seemed very unprepared. You had more procedural penalties. You've got rumors going around that coaches are skipping, the meetings before the Cotton Bowl. It just seems like a complete mess when it comes to this Ohio State program. Now, looking at Ohio State's 2024 schedule, you can see what I was talking about when it comes to it being easy. Now, every team has a double bye next year. It's just the way the scheduling works out. But the non-conference is a joke. Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, that's a free 3-0 start. You do have a bye week after week 2 at Michigan State, very likely to be a win, although Michigan State could be interesting with Aiden Childs, Jonathan Smith next year. You get Iowa at home, very likely to be a win, and then you're at Oregon. That's the huge game. That's Oregon coming into the Big Ten. That'll be a conference game, another bye week, home game with Nebraska, possibly starting Dylan Raiola, we'll see, at Penn State. That's your other really tough game. You get Purdue at home, at Northwestern, and then Indiana, and then we'll see what Michigan is. Will J.J. McCarthy come back? Will they face sanctions? Will Harbaugh even be coaching there? But you would have to think you've got to beat Michigan at the end of next year if you are Ohio State and Ryan Day, considering you're at home, considering you've lost 3 games in a row. But we will see. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.